There we are. Good morning, heroes. How are y'all this morning? You know, it'd be a whole lot easier for me if y'all just sat here. You know it? No, it's my head. I'm exercising my neck, looking all the way panoraming around. So I am so happy to see everybody. So y'all look great. We have a few more than last week. Last week was still a little rough, wasn't it? So, but well, let's say a quick prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we come to you again on this first day of the week. Father, remembering that it was on the first day that your Son rose again. Father, that he defeated death, and we are thankful to you that he had to suffer death, Father, for us, but he did it willingly. Father, he was buried, and again, he defeated death and gave us a hope of salvation. Father, I pray that as we go through this day that we're mindful of what you have done for us. Father, mindful of just how you have blessed us in so many ways that we don't even know, Father. Father, I pray that as we worship from our hearts and from our minds both, Father. Father, that we focus on you, your Son, and your Spirit. It's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen. I really never know what to say in a prayer when starting off, and y'all hear only me on Sunday mornings, at least right now. So it may sound repetitious, but I don't mean for it to. Okay, today we had a question asked last week that I made a joke and tried to push it off. And the question was, it's from Jet. Let me tell you something. If you guys want to be challenged, look at that side. Not that you guys can't challenge, don't get me wrong. But these guys over here, they like to ask the difficult questions. Y'all are nice. Anyway, but Jet asked the question, is it disobedient to not have joy? So, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Is it disobedient to not have joy? I don't know that I can answer that question. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to say your name, because I said I wasn't going to say your names last week, and I said nearly every one of you. So that was a mistake. I'm not going to do that again. So just a habit. I want y'all to think about that question for a little bit. And Jet asked me what we're going to talk about, and I told him why I wanted to talk about it today. And he says, well, am I going to get an answer to that question? Probably not. Not for me. And it's not because I'm trying to be funny. I've studied it some this week, and I just don't know that I can answer that question. But keep that in mind for a little bit, and maybe you can answer it for yourselves. So I'm going to ask y'all, I want y'all to define joy. It's kind of tough, isn't it? But y'all help me out. Y'all define joy. Something deeper. Kristen said an inner peace, not happiness, not being happy necessarily, although that may be part of it, but it's something deeper. Okay, what else? Okay, contentment and contentment. Joan and Ken are thinking the same way. Great minds think alike. So contentment. Okay? An attitude. It's an attitude, sure. And it is. It it isn't just happiness. Whenever I look in the scripture, I looked up happiness in my concordance on my Bible. It doesn't have it. It has happened, and then it skips to an HO word. I don't remember what it was, but holy maybe. But happiness isn't even in my concordance. But joy is. Okay? Joy is a fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against these there is no law. My kids used to sing a song. That's why I can say that way. Happiness is not a fruit of the Spirit. And I'm going to throw in a side note right quick. Realize I said the fruit of the Spirit, not the fruits with an S. The fruit of the Spirit is all of those things, not just for all of us, not just individually. So you can't pick and choose, in other words. So joy needs to be part of our spirit because it's the fruit of the Spirit. Happiness, it's kind of based on your circumstances, isn't it? I mean, if you have a loved one pass away, and there's several in here that have had that, you're not real happy, are you? You lose a job. I've mentioned that. I've been through that. I was not happy. I was not a happy camper. That's tough. You know, any kind of unexpected hardship that comes along, you're not going to be happy necessarily. You may put on a good front and all those kind of things. But just because you're not happy, does that mean you don't have joy? And I think it goes back to what Kristen was saying. Joy is a much deeper, and really all of y'all were saying, it's a much deeper part of who we are. Because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be part of the fruit of the Spirit. So I think this is, whenever we do this class, this topical study that we've started here a couple weeks ago, or I guess actually it was last week that we started it. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that anything that we studied was practical for all of us as Christians, not really on a physical basis or anything like that. It's how can we grow as Christians? And when Jet asked that question last week, I just, I said, well, I'm not going to answer that. And I, tried to be funny and probably at the wrong time, trying to be funny. I think joy can be a real problem for Christians. And so that's why I wanted to look at it. That's my thoughts on that. We're going to turn to several verses today. First of all, I want us to look at Hebrews chapter 12. And this verses 1 and 2. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with I'm going to start that over. I didn't read that very well. I didn't get the punctuation very good. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Okay, we already see happiness is not going to be part of joy necessarily, right? Because I don't think Jesus was happy about going to the cross. Okay? But it said he had joy. Who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. Why is that joy? Why would going to the cross be considered joy? Because of the end result, which is salvation for us. Not for him, of course, for us. That was he willingly, and I know I've said this many times in this class, and I'll say it many more times again. He willingly left heaven, willingly came to this earth, lived really a poor life, probably, as far as physically, worked hard with his hands. There's some, I was reading here lately, there's some that says that he wasn't a carpenter necessarily. Why mess with that? I don't know. But I do know that Jesus worked with his hands. He worked hard. He had to work hard. He never grasped who he was and showed it to people. He took the form of a servant for us, lived a sinless life for us. Well, yeah, for us, but because he had to. He had no choice. That's just because that's who he was, who he is, excuse me. Went to the cross willingly. Didn't want to. Remember, he prayed. But he willingly went to the cross. He died the most horrific way that you could die, and was buried and was raised again for us. Why wouldn't we have joy? That's the question I have. Why would we, as Christians, no matter what our circumstances are, why would we not have joy? And I think that's the question we should ask. Not that Jet's question wasn't a legitimate question, but for us as Christians, looking at disobedience by not being joyful is really not what we should be thinking about. We should be thinking about being joyful, right? Does anybody disagree? It's okay if you don't. What Kristen was saying is that because of the way the world defines joy, which it is almost always in happiness, dealing with what we're describing as happiness, it confuses things for the world. Now, it shouldn't confuse things for us, though, right? I mean, because our joy has to be in our salvation. That's, we talked about that last week about the assurance of salvation. I don't know that I didn't even get into my notes, so hopefully y'all kept me moving pretty good last week. Kept me thinking a lot, and please don't do that. I had a headache when we got done. No, I always appreciate the comments because I know by far there's a lot of wisdom in this room, and I don't mean just because of age. There's just a lot of wisdom in this room, and sometimes I don't have the wisest thoughts, and I realize that. I do think, and I'm trying to stick with my notes, joy is the thing that gets us through those hardships, isn't it? Because if we take our joy, if we lose that joy, the joy of what's important, then we have nothing to hold on to. Somebody will say, "I'm hanging on," and to me, if I ask them how they're doing, well, I'm hanging on. Well, I'll tell them, tie a knot in it. And to hang on that much more, but it's hang on to that joy. Hang on to, don't let yourself go down to the depths of despair. And there's Christians that you deal with it sometimes medically or physically, however you want to say it, and I realize that. I think I've been there, but it can't. That's something we just have to go to the doctor and take care of. What I'm talking about is don't let our despair, our emotional and our spiritual despair, defeat us. It's so important. Let's go to Psalms chapter 4. And I'm not going to read the whole chapter. It's only 8 verses, but I want to focus on 3. Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and read the whole chapter. It won't take me just a second. Psalms chapter 4. Answer me when I call, O God, of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts, on your beds, and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. You have put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. Every passage that we're reading is, of course, going to have joy in it. David, because this is a psalm of David. David went through a lot of heartache, a lot of between the things with Saul, David's sin, the situation with Absalom, and I don't know exactly when he wrote this particular psalm, if that was before or after any of these. We just know that David went through a lot. But he comes back and he looks in verse 3. But know that the Lord set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Okay, for us today, who's the godly? I'm looking at you. It's Christians today. God has set you apart. He has set me apart. He set Jared back there, and he's not even in this room. He's in another room back there. He set him apart. I was trying to be funny. But anyway, but he has set us all apart. And then in verse 7, you have put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and wine abound. You have given me joy. God has given me joy even though my physical needs are not taken care of. That's what that said to me, or that's what I thought it meant. Again, tie a knot in it. Hang on. Have that joy no matter what is coming your way. Okay, let's go to Habakkuk. Sorry, is there any comments? Jack. Okay. Jack asked the question, are we relating joy to our faith? Can we have joy, greater joy, with greater faith? What do y'all think? Okay. Raymond said in James, good point, both of you. Count it all joy when your faith is tested. Hold on a second. Right. It is something that develops. Christians say it's a learned, something that's learned, and it is, like I said, something that's developed, and you get stronger. How you get stronger is when your faith is tested. It's like any kind of exercise, whether it be spiritual, physical, or mental, whatever. The best way to strengthen yourself is to test yourself, lift weights, lift more all the time, and get stronger. So, Jet, what were you? Okay. What Jet was saying is that the joy for Christ was to please the Father. And how did he please the Father but was to be obedient? And so that's it. You know, all of these things, obedience, faith, and this is coming from Jet, not me, but I agree with him. Obedience, faith, joy, all these things. Of course, our whole Christian life all ties together. It's kind of like the fruit of the Spirit. It's all part of it. And for us, the Christian life it's not just one part of our lives. It's all of our lives. Now, I can't give you book, chapter, and verse where it says that, but I think we can put all that together and realize that, yeah, we're going to be tested, like Raymond was saying. We're going to be tested in our obedience, that Jet was saying. When we move forward with that, we're going to have faith, like Jack was saying. So it's all tied together, and I think that's y'all are making great points. Yes, sir. Right. 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 And what Jack was saying is that all of this ties to God's love. That's where the joy comes from. That, and I kind of abbreviate because I can't remember everything everybody says, but this joy comes from God's love. All of this, our salvation, everything comes from God's love, right? Without God's love, our joy is based on something it's just not there. Everything that we're talking about inside of us can only happen with God's love. I just said the same thing twice. Let's go over any other comments. Let's go over to Habakkuk Chapter 3. And this is a new thing for me today. I have read in Habakkuk, but I have never used Habakkuk in anything I've ever done. So this is something new. Let's go to chapter 3. And we're all the way to the end of the chapter. This is verses 17 through the end. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and I'm not reading things very well today. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the trees, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food. The flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. Okay. Again, I almost feel like I'm repeating myself over and over, but again, what Habakkuk was talking about, things can go completely south, and we can still have that joy. There at the end, when it talks about my feet, He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. Have any of y'all read the book uh, Hind's Feet on High Places by Hannah Hubbard? It's a 1950 something book this lady from England wrote, and but it talks about this Much Afraid was her name, and she was this club-footed, ugly, really to her kind of worthless deer. If I remember right, she was a deer. Anyway, maybe she becomes a deer. I don't remember anyway. But she's just not this person that considers herself good. The whole book is, I'm going to use a big word here, an allegory. I don't even know what that means. I just read it. That's what somebody said. Anyway, the whole book is about Much Afraid becoming one of God's children. Coming from not being saved to being one of God's children, immature, but growing into this beautiful deer. And female deer, I think that's a hind. I think hart and hind. Hart is the male and hind in England is the female. Anyway, if you get a chance to read the book, it's really a neat book. I don't even remember why I read it. Somebody recommended it to me back before I met Darla, which it's been a long time ago. But when I read this, of course, and that's where this came from. That's where she got the name from, Hannah Hubbard. And but is that not kind of how we are? You know, we start off probably, and I don't know about the being ugly and all that kind of stuff, because I see some pretty good-looking people in here, but our souls aren't right. We become part of God's kingdom, and then we grow. And the ultimate is to be in the book is to be on the high places, to be in heaven, and to do so. It's really a beautiful book, I think. I haven't read it in a while, but I read it. It's just been a long time. That's why I can't remember everything. But I've read it several times. But that's kind of how it is for us, isn't it? And as we grow. No matter what happens, we go through here, our farms are failing, which is, of course, back then was critical. We're losing sheep. There's no place to put our cattle. Everything has gone south. Yet, that's a huge three-letter word, yet. I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. And that's what we have to do. When these things all come, we have to sit there and go, oh, boy, things are awful. But there's still one thing that I have. I have my salvation. I have my Father who's going to get me through whatever that is. That's joy. Any comments? Okay, what Kristen was saying is that the New American Standard Version, is that right? Okay, says we'll triumph in the Lord. So the triumph, He's there with us, and we're going to win through Him, not through anything that we've done, but through Him. Okay, let's go to John chapter 15. Told y'all we'd go to a few verses. I'm going to read verses 1 through 11. Excuse me. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, He takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. Okay. The word abide 10 times in that passage, at least in the ESV, English Standard Version. We have to abide. To have that joy, we have to abide in God's love. He has to abide in us. We have to have that relationship. To me, that's what that abide, and I've mentioned before, my favorite word is dwell. We have to have that. We have to abide in him, dwell in him. He has to abide and dwell in us. That gives us joy. That's where that joy comes from. And if that happens, if he's abiding in us and we're abiding in him, that joy will not be taken away. Will it? I've loved this study because of joy. Because the joy will be full. No matter what happens in this world, we have the love of God. He loved us so much that he sent his son for us. And I know everyone knows this. I'm not saying anything new. But hold on to it. Get your joy from that, no matter what else happens. Know. And not only do you know that you have salvation, that you're going to get to be in heaven someday, but you can know that God loves you and God's going to get you through whatever's going on. That's the joy. So, any comments? I had one more passage, but the bell rang, so Anybody else have anything they want to throw in at me? Okay. Thank y'all very much. I love you.